Hello everyone, today I'll be dealing with the topic history of feminism in India. So first let's look at a very short note on what feminism is. So feminism comprises a number of social, cultural and political movements, theories and moral philosophies concerned with gender inequalities and equal rights for women. So we know that although patriarchy is deeply entrenched in the modern day India, the country has a long tradition of women who resisted conformity even under severe societal pressure. So these stories of feminism are as multicultural and diverse as India itself. So now let's look at the historical background of the rise of feminism and women's movement in India. So, not only in India but all over the world, there has been a close link between feminism and the women's movement, each inspiring and enriching the other. So, in the Indian context, while the women's movement is a much earlier phenomenon, the term feminism is the modern one. Now, in the pre independence era, the women's movement began as a social reform movement. The basic definition of feminism or feminism can start with the assertion at the center of feminism is the concerns for women's subordinate status in society and with the discrimination encountered by women just because of their sex. And furthermore, feminists call for changes in the social, political, economic, and cultural order to reduce and eventually overcome this discrimination against women and to create an equitable society in which gender justice is achieved. So we believe that this can be achieved throughout the world through movements and the establishment of institutions. Now let's look at the history of feminism in India. Now, in the literature of the early Vedic period, there are several mentions of female scholars like Lobamudra, Maitri, Gargi, etc. And among the educated women of the era, Gargi is believed to be the pioneer. And in the Upanishad, she has been credited for having drawn forth from philosophers some of the most profound questions of Vedanta, this is the nature of soul and the origins of the universe, and a public debate with the Vedic philosopher Yajnavalkya. And as Brian Black writes in his book, The Character of the Self in Ancient India, Gargi was in fact Yajnavalkya's strongest opponent, stronger than even her male counterparts. Now next we have Queen Dida, who had who had a leg disability, but she ruled Kashmir with her iron hand for more than 4 decades during the 10th century. Her tremendous political survival skill, her ability to rule, and her achievements of stability in her kingdom, she had inherited. This is the reason why she is sometimes called the Catherine of Kashmir, referring to the ruthless Catherine the Great. So, Catherine the Great is the longest ruling female leader of Russia. And next, in the 17th century, we have Bibi Kaur, who is a Sikh woman. She formed an all-women army to fight the Mughal forces, and when she was taunted by the Mughal commander Wajir Khan about the weakness of women in the battlefield, she is believed to have replied fiercely with the following words, I quote, "We are the hunters, not the hunted. Come forward and find out for yourself," unquote. So I have put up the photo image of Bibi Kaur. And next we have Rani Velu Nachiyar of Shivaganga who ruled her kingdom for over a decade, and she led her kingdom's army in numerous battles and even formed a special women's army called Udayal, which is named after her daughter. And next we have Rani Rudrama Devi. So she, after succeeding her father to the Kakatiya throne at the age of 14, she led several battles against the nobles in her kingdom, who were obviously men. So they opposed her rule because of her gender. And next we have Rani Chennamma of Kittur. So Kittur is a princely state in Karnataka, and she was the first Indian female ruler to lead an armed rebellion against the British East India Company. And in the Maratha history, we have Tarabai of Kolhapur, Anubai, and the great Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi. are well known for their skill, efficiency, diplomacy, and bravery in fighting against their rivals. And in the 19th century, the Indian women's quest for civil, political, and religious rights arose from the belly of the great social and religious reform movements of the era. So historians refer to the abolition of sati, that is the evil practice of sati, and other social evils like polygamy, child marriage, and of course the founding of widow remarriage or widow marriage association in 1861 fueled the India's modern feminist movement. So during this time, some Indian women continued to go to become the feminist ideas, like Anandi Bai Joshi. She is the first Indian woman to study abroad. Kamini Roy, who's spearheaded India's suffrage movement and fought for a women's right to education. And Kadambini Ganguly, she is the first woman to study Western medicine and one of India's first two women graduates. And next, we have Muthulakshmi Reddy. She studied in the men's college to become a doctor, and then she went on to abolish the Devadasi system. And others include Pantida Ramabai, who started a center to support widows and studied the kindergarten method of education, and Rukma Bai, who defied child marriage to become the first in India's first practicing lady doctor, and Cornelia Sorji, the first Indian woman lawyer. And also, apart from these, a special mention must be made of the inspiring woman who is often described as one of the first modern Indian feminists. That is, at the time when people hardly acknowledge the grievances of women in India, it was Savitri Bai Phule that I have put up an image of her, along with her husband Jyoti Rao, who fought against the injustices. She along with her husband fought against the injustices against the women with all they had. And in those days, widows were used to shave their heads and they wore a simple white sari and live a life of ostrich. And it was Savitri Bai who decided to stand up against the civil practice and organize a strike against the barbers in order to persuade them to stop shaving the heads of widows, most of whom were still children. So that is, most of these widows were of young age. So she also noticed the plight of sexually exploited women who, after becoming pregnant, either committed suicide or killed the newborn due to fear of banishment of society. So to take care of such women, she opened a care center for pregnant rape victims and helped deliver their children. She also founded the first school for women at Bidewada in Pune in 1848. And in the early 20th century, saw the rise of many courageous and strong-willed women who were instrumental in India's freedom struggle. So these stories of the stories of these women revolutionaries, trade union activists, the nationalists have long been an unsung part of the historical legacy that independent India inherited. So I have seen that I haven't studied about these strong willed ladies apart from Rani Lakshmi Bai, Savitri Bai in my history textbooks. So actually, these are the unsung part of the historical legacy that independent India had inherited. So this era, that is the early 20th century, also saw the rise of many women's organizations like All India Women's Conference, that is AIWC, and women with the national movement had begun insisting on greater political and economic participation. And these pioneering organizations included the Bharat Street Mandal in Calcutta, founded in 1910 by Sarala Devi, and the Women's India Association, founded in 1917 by Annie Besant, Dorothy and Maladi. Uh, sorry. Manadi Padward, and Ammu Swaminathan, Mrs. Dada Boy, and uh, Mrs. Ambujamal. So Annie Besant also led the Home Rule League and was elected the president of Calcutta Congress session in 1917. And and this year, 1917, was also significant as Sarojini Naidu led a delegation of women to meet the Montagu-Chelmsford Committee to demand a series of reforms in the condition of Indian women. And in 1925, Sarojini Naidu was elected as the president of Indian National Congress, the first Indian woman to hold that post. So it is easy to dismiss some of these achievements by pointing out that most of these women came from affluent, educated, and urban household. But even within their spheres, they all fought uphill battles to establish themselves as different and to speak out against the norm. And in the post-independence, the question of women's rights appeared to retreat from public discourse for a few years, and the second wave of feminism rights movement began in the mid 1970s. So the issue raised this time was wide ranging, from land rights and political representation to divorce laws and child custody to sexual harassment at work, dowry, rape, etc. And the women's movement interrogated the existing laws, with their questions becoming central in public discourse. And also Indian feminist writings, especially by Thoreau, that Lalitambika Andarjanam and Mahashweta Devi, also made their presence felt globally. And next, in 1974, the Committee of Status of Women presented its findings in the form of watershed report towards equality that laid the foundation of women's movement in independent India, highlighting discriminatory social cultural practices, political and economic processes. Its authors included Veena Mazumdar and Lotika Sarkar, the duo who later founded the Center for Women's Development Studies in Delhi. And in 1980, an anti-rape campaign was launched that led to the emergence of autonomous women's organization in several cities of India. So there was Saheli in Delhi, Vimochana in Bangalore, and a forum against oppression of women in Mumbai, among the others. So special interest group that focused on legal aid for women also came into existence, and several legal reforms took place. And a great example is that of the landmark Vishaka guidelines that came into being in 1997, outlining the process for dealing with the sexual harassment at the workplace. And entering talking about the 21st century, um, the Indian feminism in the 21st century engaged with a whole host of issues, from the domestic violence and rape to victim shaming and consent. Indira Jaisingh's tireless work was instrumental in framing of the Domestic Violence Act, and Jai Singh was also the first woman to be appointed as the additional Solicitor General of India in 2009. Senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, Meenakshi Arora's persistent effort led to the framing of Vishaka's guidelines, which later culminated in the legislation of the sexual harassment of women at workplace. And the activist Kavita Krishnan set in motion a series of protests and uproar after 2012 Nirbhaya rape case, which eventually led to the legislation of the Criminal Law Amendment 2013, in the year 2013, that made changes in the existing rape laws in the nation. So, identified by the Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential women in 2013, lawyer Brinda Grover was also influential in drafting the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013. Now, talking about feminism in the present day, uh, India, feminism in present day India has been showing some encouraging trends. First, increasing economic liberty is allowing women to fight stereotyping, and second, what women want is changing, that is, from economic rights to social and sexual rights. And third, women are not vacating their spaces, they are negotiating harder to expand them. Fourth, there is a genuine partnership and collaboration among men and women, particularly youngsters, to embrace meaningful gender equality. And even the entry of women into Shabarimala can be read as a propulsion for the feminist movement. Now finally, the internet and the information revolution is helping women form communities and network, giving them a bigger voice and tools to organize themselves, to forge partnerships and demand their rights. So most academics attribute the growth of feminism in India to Western influence, disregarding the fact that feminism is multicultural. The needs and problems of women who live in different countries are similar. So, however, Indians do not have to borrow feminism from West. So, as we are also studying in this women's college, and are prescribed with the papers like women's writing, it is all actually fueling this women movement. Now, however, however, Indians do not did not have to um, borrow feminism from the West, as I said before. And throughout the history, Indian women have asserted themselves in multiple ways and broken free of oppressive social norms. And these whispers of rebellion were bypassed or ignored by patriarchal documentations, but they were always there, and they must be remembered also. So even though there still remains a lot of work to be done, the movement to secure rights for women in India has come a long way, and we should be thankful to these inspiring and fierce personalities, these strong women personalities, who made it possible by relentlessly fighting the forces of patriarchy. And there were and are still are many other individuals and organizations who are working for gender equality and justice in India, and their efforts are paying off, which is a positive sign. So that's it. um, Thank you.